In the fog-choked valleys of northern England, nestled among jagged cliffs and skeletal trees, lies the village of Eldermoor.
It is a place forgotten by time, where the wind howls like a grieving widow and the stars seem reluctant to shine. At the edge of Eldermoor stands Hollowridge Manor, a decaying Gothic estate that looms over the village like a vengeful spectre. Its spires pierce the sky, and its windows, dark and hollow, seem to watch the world with malevolent intent. For centuries, Hollowridge Manor has been a place of dread.
The villagers speak of it only in hushed tones, crossing themselves as they pass its rusted gates.
They tell tales of the Ashbourne family, who built the manor in the 17th century, and of the curse that devoured them. No one knows the full truth, but the stories are enough to keep even the bravest souls away. They say the manor is alive, that its walls pulse with a sinister energy, and that those who enter are never seen again, or if they are no longer human.
In the autumn of 1923, a group of outsiders arrived in Eldermoor, drawn by rumors of the manor's secrets. They were scholars, thrill-seekers, and skeptics, united by a desire to uncover the truth behind Hollowridge's curse. What they found would haunt the world forever, a tale so chilling that it would be whispered for generations. This is their story, a descent into madness, terror, and the unrelenting grip of an ancient evil. The rain fell in sheets as the group's horse-drawn carriage rattled along the muddy road to Eldermoor. There were 6 of them: Dr. Evelyn Hart, a historian obsessed with occult lore; Thomas Carver, a skeptical journalist;
Clara Pembroke, a medium who claimed to commune with spirits;
Father Edmund Blake, a priest seeking to exorcise the manor's demons; Maggie Dunn, a young photographer eager for adventure;
and Victor Langston, a wealthy adventurer funding the expedition. Evelyn clutched her leather-bound notebook, her fingers tracing the words she'd written about Hollowridge.
The Ashbourne family vanished in 1697, she said, her voice barely audible over the storm. The manor was sealed, but strange lights and screams have been reported ever since.
The villagers believe the family made a pact with the demon. Thomas scoffed, wiping rain from his spectacles.
Superstition. It's probably just a crumbling ruin with a few bats and bad acoustics. Clary's eyes gleamed in the dim light.
You see, Mr. Carver,
the spirits are restless.
I can feel them already.
The carriage stopped at Eldermoor's only inn, a squat, gloomy building called the Black Hound. The innkeeper, a gaunt man named Mr. Harrow, eyed them warily.
You're here for the manor, aren't you?
He muttered. Fools. No one comes back from Hollowridge the same.
We're not here for ghost stories, Victor said, tossing a coin onto the counter.
We're here for answers. Harry's lips twitched. Answers?
The manor doesn't give answers. It takes. That night, as the group dined on watery stew, Maggie noticed the villagers staring.
Their faces were pale, their eyes hollow.
One old woman approached, her hands trembling.
Leave, she whispered.
The manor knows you're here. It's watching. Father Blake placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We are protected by faith, madame.
No evil can withstand the light of God.
The old woman laughed, a dry, bitter sound.
God doesn't live in Hollowridge. The next morning, the group set out for the manor. The path wound through a forest of twisted, leafless trees, their branches clawing at the sky. The air grew colder, heavier, as if the world itself were holding its breath. When they reached the manor's gates, they found them ajar, creaking in the wind. Beyond lay a courtyard choked with weeds, and the manor itself a sprawling labyrinth of stone and shadow.
It's magnificent, Evelyn breathed, sketching the manor's facade in her notebook.
Gargoyles leered from the rooftops, their stone faces frozen in grotesque snarls. It's a tomb, Thomas muttered, but even he couldn't tear his eyes away. Clara shivered, clutching her shawl. The spirits are strong here.
They're angry
and afraid.
Victor pushed the gates open, and they stepped into the courtyard.
The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the ground seemed to pulse beneath their feet.
Maggie raised her camera, snapping a photo of the manor's entrance.
When she lowered the lens, she froze. Did anyone else see that? She whispered. See what? Father Blake asked in the window.
A face.
It was there, then it was gone.
The group exchanged uneasy glances, but Victor waved it off.
Nerves, Miss Dunn. Let's move. The front doors, massive and carved with strange, spiraling symbols, groaned as they opened. Inside, the manor was a maze of dust and darkness. Cobwebs draped the chandeliers and portraits lined the walls. Ashbourne ancestors whose painted eyes seemed to follow them. The air was stifling, and every step echoed like a heartbeat. "This place is wrong," Clara said, her voice trembling. "The walls, they're breathing."
Enough of that, Thomas snapped, but his bravado faltered when a cold draft swept through the hall, extinguishing their lanterns.
They set up camp in the grand foyer, unwilling to venture deeper until morning. Father Blake blessed the space, sprinkling holy water and reciting prayers, but the words seemed to dissolve into the oppressive silence.
Maggie developed her photos, her hands shaking as she studied the images.
One showed the manor's entrance, but the window Maggie had mentioned was blurred, as if something had moved too fast for the camera to capture. "It's not your imagination," Evelyn said, examining the photo.
"There's something here, something that doesn't want to be seen." Clara sat cross-legged, her eyes closed, attempting to contact the spirits. "They're everywhere," she murmured. "So many voices.
So much pain. They're trapped. Trapped by what?"
Victor asked. Clara's eyes snapped open, white with terror.
"By it."
"The thing that lives in the walls."
As if in response, a low, guttural moan echoed through the manor.
The group froze, their breath visible in the suddenly frigid air.
The moan grew louder, joined by whispers, hundreds of voices overlapping, speaking in a language none of them recognized.
Father Blake raised his crucifix.
"In the name of Christ, I command you to be silent." The whispers stopped, but the silence was worse. It was heavy, alive, pressing against their skulls. Then, from the darkness, came a single, clear sound, a child's laughter. Maggie screamed, pointing to the staircase. A small figure stood there, a girl in a tattered dress, her face obscured by shadow.
She giggled again, then darted into the darkness.
"We have to follow her," Evelyn said, grabbing a lantern. "Are you mad?" Thomas hissed. "This place is a death trap."
But Evelyn was already moving, and the others, reluctant but compelled, followed.
The girl led them to a hidden door behind a tapestry, revealing a spiral staircase descending into the earth. The air grew damp and foul, and the walls were slick with something that looked like blood but smelled like rot.
The staircase seemed endless, each step taking them deeper into the manor's heart.
At the bottom, they found a vast chamber, its walls carved with the same spiraling symbols from the front doors.
In the center stood an altar, stained black and surrounded by bones, human and otherwise. Above the altar hung a massive mirror, its surface rippling like water.
"This is no ordinary mirror," Clara said, her voice barely a whisper. "It's a gate. A gate to what?"
Maggie asked, her camera forgotten in her hands. "To it," Clara said.
"The thing the Ashbourne summoned."
Evelyn approached the altar, her notebook open. The Ashbournes were alchemists, but they dabbled in forbidden rituals. They sought immortality, but they opened a door to something else, something that devoured them. As she spoke, the mirror pulsed, and the air grew thick with static.
Shadows moved within the glass, forming shapes, hands, faces, eyes. The whispers returned, louder now, chanting a single word. "Ashbourne, Ashbourne, Ashbourne." Father Blake stepped forward, his crucifix raised. "This is a place of evil.
We must destroy it."
But before he could act, the mirror flashed, and the chamber filled with blinding light. When their vision cleared, the girl was standing on the altar, her face now visible.
Her eyes were black voids, and her mouth stretched into an unnatural grin.
"You cannot leave," she said, her voice a chorus of screams.
"The manor hungers."
The group fled, but the manor seemed to shift around them. Hallways twisted, doors vanished, and the walls bled. They were trapped in a living nightmare, hunted by the girl and the shadows that poured from the mirror. Each encounter left them more broken, their minds fraying under the weight of the manor's malice. Clara was the first to fall. She became obsessed with the mirror, claiming it showed her the truth about the world.
One night, she vanished, leaving only a note. "I am part of it now." They found her later, standing before the mirror, her body fused with the glass, her face frozen in a scream.
Thomas, the skeptic, began to hear his own voice mocking him from the shadows. "You are nothing," it whispered. "You'll die here forgotten." He grew paranoid. accusing the others of betraying him.
One night, he attacked Victor with a knife. Screaming about the eyes in the walls, Victor subdued him, but Thomas's mind was gone. He sat in a corner, muttering to himself, until the shadows took him. Maggie's photos revealed more than she could bear.
Each image showed the group, but their faces were wrong, distorted, hollow, with black voids where their eyes should be. She burned the photos, but the images haunted her dreams.
She began to see the girl everywhere, whispering her name.
Father Blake clung to his faith, but even he wavered. The manor's evil was unlike anything he'd faced, a force that mocked his prayers. He performed an exorcism, but the ritual backfired, and the shadows grew stronger. He was found later, his crucifix shattered, his body covered in scratches that formed the spiraling symbols.
Evelyn and Victor were the last.
They discovered a journal in the library, written by Lord Bartholomew Ashbourne.
It detailed the ritual that doomed his family a pact with an entity called the Hollow. The Ashbournes offered their souls in exchange for power, but the Hollow betrayed them, trapping them in the manor as its eternal servants. The journal ended with a warning: the Hollow feeds on fear. To escape, you must face it.
Evelyn and Victor returned to the chamber, determined to confront the Hollow. The mirror was alive now, its surface a swirling void of faces and claws. The girl appeared, her form shifting, sometimes a child, sometimes a grotesque amalgamation of limbs and eyes. "You cannot win," she said. "The Hollow is eternal. You are nothing."
Evelyn, her voice steady despite her fear, read from the journal, reciting a counter-ritual to banish the Hollow.
Victor stood guard, wielding a candelabrum as shadows lunged from the mirror. The air crackled with energy, and the manor shook, its walls screaming. The girl laughed, her body splitting open to reveal a gaping maw.
"You think words can stop me?"
"I am the void. I am the end."
But Evelyn pressed on, her voice rising.
The mirror began to crack, and the shadows recoiled.
Victor drove the candelabrum into the girl's form, and she shrieked, her body dissolving into ash.
The mirror shattered, and a deafening silence fell. The manor was still, but the air was heavy with the promise of retribution.
Evelyn and Victor stumbled through the collapsing hallways, the walls crumbling around them. They reached the courtyard as dawn broke, the manor collapsing into a pile of rubble behind them.
They returned to Eldermoor, but the villagers shunned them, their eyes filled with fear. The innkeeper handed them a single photo Maggie had left behind a blurry image of the group entering the manor. In the background, a figure stood, its face a void, its hands outstretched.
Evelyn and Victor left Eldermoor, but they were never the same. Evelyn burned her notes, unable to bear the memories.
Victor became a recluse, haunted by the whispers that followed him. The manor was gone, but the Hollow was not. It lingered in their dreams, in the shadows, waiting.
Years later, a new manor rose on the ruins of Hollowridge, built by a wealthy industrialist who dismissed the old tales.
The villagers warned him, but he laughed, calling it progress. The manor was completed in 1930, and the industrialist moved in with his family.
They vanished within a month.
Today, Hollowridge Manor stands again, its gates locked, its windows dark. The villagers say the shadows still move within, and the whispers never stop. Some claim to have seen a girl in a tattered dress, standing at the edge of the forest, beckoning. And in the silence of the night, if you listen closely, you can hear it, the heartbeat of the manor, calling for its next guest.